What is up, guys? This is Olympio, coming at you with a discussion about a very simple question. What is the best deck you have ever used in your Yu-Gi-Oh! Life? Now, it might be a very difficult question because throughout the game there have been many different decks in different formats, and obviously the game has had to evolve through fusions, rituals, XYZs, synchros, and now, you know, new stuff that's coming out. It always evolves and it will always change the playstyle of different decks. And you can't really put decks against other decks from different eras and formats. For example, you can't put a original Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck against the new decks that are out now because it will probably just crush it. Admittedly, those decks in the old days, if they had their banned cards, if you went by the formats you were in, it might help, but it's still probably going to be the new ones just going to beat the other ones, and that's just how the power creep goes. They're always going to be more powerful just because you have to kind of keep the game going and alive and flowing. But it's a very interesting question as to what your best deck is. I'm not saying it's the deck that you got highest with in a tournament one time. It's the deck that you really gelled with, the one that you knew inside out, back to front, and the one that you did most successful with day in, day out, week in, week out. So there are many different formats. One of the decks that I did really well with, a very simple beatdown deck. It was back in the day, of course, but it was basically final attack orders, your goblin attack force, your giant orc, your spear dragon. That deck very quickly overpowered my opponents in the fact that they couldn't get going, because I would get these really big beaters out and they would just crumble, because don't forget that was very, very old back then. That was about 11 years ago, 12 years ago, because Yu-Gi-Oh's been going for about 14 years, something like that. Back then, that was gods. That was like such a difficult deck to go up against. And now it wouldn't stand up at all, because, you know, that's how it is. Another one that was always good for me was Goat Control. Goat Control was always a fun format, and a lot of people still love that format. People, if they get bored with the current meta, they will kind of go back to their Goat Control decks and kind of play with that, because arguably it takes a lot of skill to play in that format. You have a lot of ban cards that you can utilize, but it doesn't mean that you can just play them straight away and you're going to win, because your opponent has the exact same deck basically that you have, and it's a very skilled and difficult format to play in. And it was a very fun one as well, because it was very difficult to kind of read what your opponent was going to do. Another one that I've always loved was the Teledad format. That format was nuts. Arguably one of the most broke formats around. The decks in there were just crazy good. The Teledad deck was one of the best decks around, and I feel that that isn't really going to be topped as such, because, you know, dads were going for 150, 200 quid each, and you played 3 of them. Then you had Dimension Fusion and all these cards that were just so broken and so expensive, and decks back then were hitting like $1,000, $2,000 just for a deck. That was a crazy time in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I don't think is going to return anytime soon, to be honest. I think personally for me, deck that's most best with and that's looked after me is probably Herald of Perfection. My win ratio is probably very high with the Herald of Perfection, because I don't often lose as such that much, because I know the deck, I know what my opponent's playing, because, not to be big-headed, but I'm quite knowledgeable in the sense I know decks because I research into them. I research into the decks that are around, the rogue decks that are popping up as well, so I know how to play against those decks. I know what the key cards are. But I think Herald of Perfection is one of those decks that's the highest, as well as Heretics. Heretics are another one that I'm really good with. It's kind of just what gels with you most, what you really like as well, and the play style that fits you, because Heretics and Herald are very different play styles, but I feel that I can adapt to use them quite well just because I've worked to understand those combos. I've worked very hard on the decks to find consistency, put a lot of time and effort into them. So I want to know what your best deck is ever in your Yu-Gi-Oh! Lifetime. So let me know down in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe, and I shall catch you guys later.